Putin Bad News Ukraine is making progress despite emerging Russian dangers. The most intense fighting in recent days has occurred in the east and south of Ukraine, where Ukrainian forces have made significant gains. Despite grave obstacles in the near future, new indicators suggest that Ukraine is gaining momentum 2 months after it began its counteroffensive against Russian invaders. According to experts, Ukrainian forces have made significant advances in the east and south of the country, where the fighting has been the fiercest in recent days. The Wagner Group mercenary troops fought a brutal campaign for months this spring, and the Independent Institute for the Study of War reported that 3 new fronts have opened up around the contested city of Bakhmut. According to the Institute's estimates, Ukraine has achieved small successes in these areas and is making slow but steady progress westward toward the region around Zaporizhia, where there is a large nuclear power plant that has been regularly shelled since the war began. Local commanders, meanwhile, are cautiously optimistic about their advancement. Ukrainian forces are making progress, slowly but surely, around Bakhmut and elsewhere in Donetsk province, according to Serhiy Cherevity, spokesman for Ukraine's Eastern Group of Forces. Ex-Australian Army general and expert on Ukraine Mick Ryan describes the recent reports as excellent news. Although we must acknowledge the Ukrainian lives this has cost to achieve, he wrote in his most recent analysis for Substack. Despite this success, the Ukrainian ground forces still have a ways to go before they can make an operational breakthrough and advance to their southern seacoast. Ukraine's counteroffensive has been largely ineffective, according to President Vladimir Putin and other top Russian leaders, but the latest successes have proven pressing enough for Kremlin officials to issue new ultimatums if Kyiv's progress continues. If Ukraine regains territory Moscow now claims as its own, then we would have to use the nuclear weapon, former Russian president and current deputy chairman for Russia's Security Council Dmitry Medvedev wrote on Sunday on the social media platform formerly known as Twitter. Simply put, there would be no other way out, as Medvedev put it in his letter. Our enemies must bow down to our warriors because of this. The world's nuclear fire is being contained thanks to them. He was alluding to Russia's escalate to de-escalate nuclear doctrine, in which a single small, tactical nuclear weapon would be used to instill fear in the hearts of the enemy and force them to negotiate with Moscow. Experts are skeptical that Moscow will actually carry out these threats, despite its repeated assurances to the contrary. The vast majority of Russians also disagree with their government's decision to use nuclear weapons. Both sides have been trying to influence the war in Russia by focusing on public opinion rather than just the military situation on the ground in Ukraine. Several drone attacks last week, including one that landed near the Russian Ministry of Defense building, and more overnight late Sunday, early Monday suggest that Ukraine is increasing its use of drone attacks against Moscow and other key hubs in Russia. Kyiv's government hasn't taken credit for the attacks on Russian logistics hubs and the capital city's historic core, but they're part of an effort to make sure Moscow pays for its unprovoked invasion. It is the opinion of Western governments that these attacks could have a significant impact on the widespread approval Putin enjoys at home for his invasion of Ukraine. The drone strikes, Wagner's mutinous march on Moscow last month, and reports that Putin seeks to expand the age for Russians to be pressed into service are all mentioned in a new post from British military intelligence and are said to highlight the Russian state's failure to insulate the population from the war. The potential fallout from these stories has been contained thus far by Putin's government, largely due to its iron-fisted control of the news media in Russia. Analysts in Russia say the average citizen pays little attention to stories like these, despite the fact that state news services have underreported the drone strikes and focused largely on operations it says have targeted drone manufacturing facilities in Ukraine. Professor of International Affairs at the New School Nina Khrushcheva told the BBC on Monday from Russia that the number of Ukrainian casualties since the start of the counteroffensive, which Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said recently exceeds 20,000, is the top story people are following. We have heard President Putin say on multiple occasions that Russian casualties are present, albeit to a lesser extent than Ukrainian ones. She emphasized that the number of Russian deaths was irrelevant. She went on to say that the most well-known quote from Putin among Russians is, "We cannot stop shelling because they are coming at us, now." And it appears that Russian backing for the war is continuing. Among Russians, 75% now support the war, according to a poll released this past Friday by the independent Levada Center, which is widely regarded as the most reliable glimpse into public opinion within the authoritarian state. Among those who previously said they, rather supported, Russia's invasion, 30%, 45% are now saying they, definitely support it. However, as Levada pointed out, there appears to be growing support for peace negotiations with Ukraine, suggesting that Russian public support for the war is not assured and will require new efforts by the Kremlin to maintain, especially as new avenues of diplomatic engagement regarding the conflict speed up.